What is going on, guys? In today's video I will show you the top 3 best ranger builds in Path of Exile 2 0.3 update. So in this guide I will give you a quick overview of each setup, then I will explain what skill gems and upgrades should you focus on. Then as well we'll see what is the best gear and how to get it. And then finally we will go over to the passive skill tree, the stats, your skill rotations, and even what Atlas passive should you use, so we would be able to get the highest damage possible and much more. And remember, if you want to try any of these builds out, then check my links in the description. And before we continue, thanks to U4GM. They are a pro website that provides POE2 services like cheap currency, then even to trade all types of quality items and gems and much more. They have also more than 20,000 positive comments on Trustpilot, and this website is really worth a try. So make sure to use my discount code KATE for extra 6% off. This is a setup that has been making waves across the community because of how effortlessly it can shred through the maps, crush bosses and scale into the endgame. If you are someone who enjoys a fast-paced range playstyle with the ability to delete entire screens of enemies in seconds, then this is a setup that you definitely want to try out. The strength of this build comes from combining lightning arrows' massive screen clearing power with the supporting mechanics like the Herald of the Thunder, tornado shot and the lightning rods for devastating single target damage. When you're mapping, it feels like you're constantly surrounded by the chain explosions of the lightning and a thunder as the shocked enemies fall and trigger even more Herald procs. And when it comes to fighting bosses, you can just switch into a very controlled single target rotation that melts even the tankiest targets. What really makes this build stand out compared to the other setups in the 0.3 is its versatility. It clears like a zoom mapper, but also has the raw damage to take down pinnacle bosses. And on top of that, it's very forgiving to gear. And thanks to how Ranger works, you can solve mana problems with just one good stat roll or a single Jewel. By the time that you're properly geared, mana stops being an issue entirely, leaving you freely to focus purely on deleting everything in front of you. So let's start with the core of our build, which is the active skill setup. We are playing as the Ranger class, and we ascend into the Deadeye. The Ascendancy pairs perfectly with the Lightning Arrow because of the projectile bonuses and incredible scaling we get from its nodes. Your main ability is of course the Lightning Arrow. This is your bread and butter skill for clearing packs, and when arrows hit, it unleashes beams of lightning that chain out nearby enemies, freezing and shocking them in the process. Combine this with the Pierce, and each arrow can proc multiple arcs, which means that you can wipe out dense packs in seconds. For mapping, you'll be basically spamming Lightning Arrow non-stop. Then comes in the Lightning Rod, which is your go-to ability for single target fights. You plant rods under bosses and detonate them with your lightning attacks to cause massive bursts of damage. The more arrows you can stack, the more devastating your rod explosion becomes. And we also want modifiers that add additional arrows, as they multiply your single target output. Then Tornado Shot serves as our supplemental single target tool. When you place a tornado on top of the boss and fire into it, then projectiles split into novas that stack more damage on your target. It's especially effective when paired with the Lightning Rod. Then the Voltaic Mark is your curse setup. By applying it to the bosses, you not only increase the chance to shock, but also boost the effectiveness of those shocks, making them take even more damage. This single gem supercharges your boss DPS. Then Herald of Thunder is where your clear speed really gets pushed over the edge. Every time you kill a shocked enemy, the lightning bolts rain down and chain through the packs by creating a cascade effect. When combined with the chain arcs of the Lightning Arrow, this results in near infinite screen-wide clearing. And lastly, we will have Barrage in our rotation. We use it to empower the Lightning Arrow or the raw damage. It synergizes well with the other skills, which gives you a powerful cooldown option for the extra burst. Also, one extra tip, keep the Stormcaller arrow on the weapon swap. This allows you to inflict a massive 20-second shock on the bosses, which gives you a huge damage boost, especially in the early stages, before your gear really comes active. Now let's talk about the passive tree, because this is what really transforms the build into a powerhouse. For attributes, you will want to grab enough intelligence and dexterity to meet your gem requirements, and then dump the rest into strength for the extra life. Early on, don't worry too much about perfectly balancing your attributes. You can respec the hooded one or Doriani later on if the gear changes your requirements. Then the build follows a progression where you start with evasion base 3, then transition into a hybrid setup, and eventually go into a full critical strike focus tree once your bow is strong enough. That's because critical strike scaling will heavily rely on your weapon having a really good base crit and damage. Without it, the investment is just not worth enough. but once you get the right bow, the damage will skyrocket. In the endgame, you'll eventually move into the chaos inoculation if you want to completely ignore the chaos damage. This does require strong gear, but it makes your character much tankier against endgame content. The ghost dance will then serve as your main source of recovery. Overall, this setup emphasizes projectile damage, attack speed, evasion, and later critical strike multipliers. It's a natural fit for a bow ranger, and feels smooth when you progress through it. Then next up we have gear, which is always a huge part of any build, so let's break down what you exactly need. Your first priority is capping your elemental resistances at 75% across the board. Fire, cold, and lightning resistances will need to be maxed before you do anything else. For weapons, your goal is to get the highest DPS bow that you can, and in the best case scenario on a Gemini base, look for high elemental or physical damage and increased attack speed. If you find a bow with a critical strike chance, then it's even better, because that is what unlocks your crit scaling later. Then the quiver should have a flat damage, attack speed, or projectile modifiers. Projectile speed is also a great bonus, because it makes your lightning arrow feel much smoother. Then on rings and gloves should focus on the flat damage and resistances. Ideally, you want a flat lightning or the physical damage here, to scale from your attacks. Your amulet should provide spirit, since you will need at least 30 if you want to run the Rockei Mountain or the companion with the K-Stara. Then for the chest armor, prioritize the high evasion. Once you're pushing red maps, rarity becomes very valuable, so aim for at least 100% increased rarity if possible, but don't sacrifice damage or defenses just to hit that number. Then Jevels on the tree should provide generic damage bonuses, so things like the attack damage, elemental damage, movement speed, projectile damage, and even attack speed. One Jevel must have a Sapphire Jevel with a mana on kill. This completely fixes the mana issue during mapping. And finally, anoint the serrated edge on your amulet for a solid damage boost. The core principle of gearing is simple. Upgrade your bow first, then focus on defenses like evasion and energy shield, and finally fill in your resistances and damage stats with the accessories. And now finally, let's see how to actually play this build. For clearing maps, it's simple. Just fire lightning arrow into the packs. Herald of the Thunder will take care of the chaining explosions, and your arrows will arc lightning through everything in a sight. Then against tanky rares, you can drop the lightning arrow to speed up things. For bosses, your rotation is little more involved. Precast about 20 lightning rods where the boss is going to spawn. If possible, also drop a frost bomb for the extra debuff. When the boss spawns, immediately apply the Voltaic Mark, then weapon swap to cast the ball lightning for a huge shock uptime. Then fire tornado shot directly on the boss, and then use the brush to empower your arrows. Once that's set up, you just spam lightning arrow and watch the health bar disappear. This setup takes everything that people love about the lightning arrow meta build and flips it into the cold base monster that freezes, shatters, and absolutely demolishes maps at the lightning speed. In patch 0.3, the cold bow skills and the Deadeye both received huge buffs, and when you put those two things together, then you will get a build that doesn't just clear screens, it destroys them before enemies even have a chance to move. For map clearing, the Ice Shot is your powerhouse. With the right support gems, the projectile train across the screen, and spreading the chill ground and freezing everything in their path, the monster groups just don't die, they explode in a cascade of shatters and the Herald of the Ice stacks, by leaving nothing behind. And when it's time for bosses, then you bring out the Lightning Rod, the Orb of Storms, and the Snipe, while stacking freezing effects that keep them locked down. The fact that you can do both, so clear like a speed demon and take down endgame encounters, makes this build incredibly versatile. So now let's break down the most important skill gems. At its core, we are centering everything around the Ice Shot. This is your main clearing ability, and the bread and butter skill that carries the build. When you fire the Ice Shot, the projectile not only deals direct cold damage, but also creates a chilling ground behind it, which slows enemies, and stacks freeze effects across the map. Then the ice-tapped arrows are the best perfect secondary skill, by providing additional cold damage while stacking freeze and the blind effects on tougher enemies. This not only boosts your crowd control, but also makes enemies more vulnerable to your other abilities. When you combine the Ice Tap arrows with the chilling ground from the Ice Shot, as they're unable to respond before you shatter them. Then the Freezing Salvo is where the things get spicy. This skill adds a huge cold projectile damage and is perfect for both AoV and single target scenarios. supported by the Hourglass for the cooldown manipulation and the Cold Penetration for breaking through the resistances. The Freezing Salvo ensures that bosses and elite monsters can hide behind high defenses. When you drop this on top of a pack, you're guaranteed an icy explosion of the dead. For debuffs, we are running the Frost Bomb. This applies the cold exposure, which makes enemies take significantly more cold damage. With the potent exposure and the magnified aerial support, your Frost Bombs become larger and more consistent source of vulnerability for the enemies. Dropping this before a boss fight will set you up for a massive burst damage. Then Herald of the Ice is where the clear speed really goes over the top. Every time you freeze and shatter an enemy, it causes icy explosions that chain through the pack. Combine that with your ice shot chaining, and suddenly every screen turns into a chain reaction of freezing detonations. The Herald is supported with the Overleech, the Cold Attunement and Elemental Armament, which all amplify your scaling and consistency. And then finally, for single target nukes, you will be using the Snipe. This is your big high damage channel skill that absolutely melts bosses in seconds. Next up, moving over to the passive tree, and this is where you really transform the Ice Shot Deadeye into an unstoppable force. The core psychology of the tree is simple: maximize cold damage, maximize projectile scaling, and add enough defenses so you don't get one shot. From the beginning, you will branch into projectile damage, bow attack speed, and the crit multipliers. These are the bread and butter for any bow build, and they make the ice shot scale beautifully. You also want to invest into the clusters that enhance the cold damage specifically, so things like the cold penetration, freeze duration, and the cold exposure. This ensures that not only do you hit hard, but enemies stay frozen long enough for you to capitalize. Then defensively, you're investing into the evasion and life, which naturally synergizes with the Ranger's playstyle. With the high evasion, mobility, and the Wind Dancer keystone, you can avoid the majority of incoming damage. The build plays the best when you're constantly moving, so these defenses will line up perfectly with your natural gameplay. Then Javel sockets are another important aspect of the tree. These will give you flexibility, so early on you can grab resistances or mana sustain, and then later you can swap in the pure gems with the projectile multipliers, crit chance, and attack speed. On Javels, your priority should be on mana kill, as it smooths out early sustained problems. Then next up we have gear, which is always a big one, so let's break it down. Your number one priority is your bow. This build scales insanely well with the weapon quality, so the stronger your bow, the better everything feels. Look for a high base DPS bow with added cold damage, added physical damage, and ideally plus levels to projectile gems. A Gemini base is a fantastic starting point. If you can find a bow with a crit chance as well, then that's where your damage really starts to explode. For your quiver, you wanna focus on the flat damage, attack speed, and projectile modifiers. Then mana on kill is amazing bonus here, by smoothing out sustain early. Then projectile speed also makes the ice shot feel cleaner. Then for your gloves and ring, you should prioritize the flat cold damage, resistances, and attack speed. Rings with the added physical or the cold damage to attacks are especially valuable. Your amulet is a great place to grab levels to bow or projectile gems, as well as critical strike multipliers. Later on, anointing a damage node like the serrated edges can push your damage even further. Then defensively, we focus on a high evasion gear for your chest and the boots. Resistances should always be kept at 75%, and movement speed on the boots make the build feel much smoother. The Javels are where you round everything out. You want mana on kill, which is a must-have, and after that prioritize attack speed, cold damage, crit multipliers, and projectile damage. Overall, the gear progression is simple. Upgrade your bow first, then cap resistances and scale evasion, and finally min-max your accessories. And now last but not least, let me show you the gameplay. For clearing, it does not get much simpler than just spamming the ice shot. In the background, the Herald of Ice will handle the chain explosions, and your ice shot projectiles will ricochet through entire packs by freezing everything in their path, so pretty much the screen clears itself. Against bosses, your rotation is slightly more involved, but still very easy to manage. So open by dropping the Frost Bomb to apply the cold exposure. Then set up the Orb of Storms and the Lightning Rod to stack on the bosses. Then from there, we combine the Ice Tapped Arrows and the Freezing Salvo for the maximum cold damage. Once the boss is frozen or vulnerable, then channel the Snipe for a devastating burst, and follow that up with the Barrage if needed. This combination absolutely melts even the pinnacle bosses. And now lastly, let's take a look at the leveling. So while grinding, you wanna start out with the lightning and the ice abilities, until the ice shot becomes available at level 9. From there you gradually transition into more cold damages as you unlock the ice tap arrows, freezing salvo, and the herald of ice. The leveling process is smooth, because the cold damage will unlock early. This build is a brand new version of the newly buffed grenade skills, Instead of standing still and firing arrows, we are now throwing grenades and detonating them with explosive bolts in split seconds. The core gameplay loop revolves around combining explosive shot with explosive grenade and stacking them into a very high speed, no aim, screen clearing machine. The clear speed is one of the standout strengths for this build. With the right setup, as you can see, you can achieve full screen clears without needing to even aim. Combine this with decent gear for movement speed and you can hit upwards of 160% movement speed. The key idea here is that you can sprint through the maps throwing out grenades and bolts without ever slowing down and without suffering the penalties for shooting while moving. On top of it, with a decent investment, we can also one-shot bosses. Explosive grenade in particular will hit like a truck when stacked with the right modifiers and when paired with a rapid shot to preload the extra fire as damage, so you can melt pinnacle bosses in seconds. And thanks to our clever gearing and ascendancy synergy, you don't need to even worry about the mana management at all. You can simply throw, explode and keep moving. So let's take a look at the skill gems. And the build starts with the explosive shot as your main mapping skill. This is the centerpiece of your clearing setup. The way you run it is explosive shot fires projectiles in a wide circular spread, meaning that every pack on your screen gets tagged and detonated instantly. The explosions will chain off each other, and once the Herald of Thunder gets involved, it's just non-stop lightning detonation spreading everywhere. The key to making this feel smooth is the Arjune's Medal, which refills bolts automatically without even needing to reload. This one unique turns explosive shot into a seamless, fire and forget skill that you can spam infinitely. Now, while this is ideal for mapping and clearing, it does not always cut for single target bosses, and that's where our second setup comes in. So you want to get another explosive shot, and this time configure it for single target. And this is where the Nova projectiles will come into play. With the right gear, you can swap into the gem setup before a boss encounter, and shift your character from a screen clearing grenadier into a focused artillery platform. If you're still progressing early on and don't yet have the gear to support the Nova projectiles, then you can just stick with the multi-shot 2 or the Pierce 2 before making this switch. Both of these will work fine while mapping until your upgrades will come online. Then explosive grenade is the other half of this equation. This skill provides massive burst damage that you need to nuke bosses or tanky rares. The combo is simple. You throw the grenade, then follow up with the explosive shot, and watch the entire screen get deleted. The synergy between the grenade and the bolt is what gives the build its identity. And then Herald of Thunder is working in the background as a passive source of shock. Every time you detonate enemies with explosive shot or grenade, the Herald Thunder will proc by chaining shock across the maps and adding even more explosions. These constant lightning arcs don't just look flashy, they massively increase your mapping efficiency and add the shock effect for single target bursts. Then on top of it, the called shots will add another layer by auto-casting will take mark every few seconds. This means you're consistently applying shock with the magnitude scaling, by boosting your single target damage and layering in extra explosions during your mapping. You don't have to think about it, it just happens automatically in the background, which works perfectly with our low maintenance build. Then the rapid shot is your pre-prep tool. Before a boss fight, you just spam the rapid shot to charge up the heat, converting it into a huge boost, so you will get 50% of your fire damage as the extra damage for your next explosive grenade. With this combo, you can preload insane amount of burst before engaging. And to make this burst land reliably, you can slot in the flash grenade as your crowd control option. It will stun the boss and keep them locked in place by giving you this free time to drop the big combo without ever worrying about dodging mid-cast. Then next, our passive tree is straightforward but very crucial to unlocking speed and explosiveness of this build. The first decision is to dedicate the grenades to the tree 1 and explosive shot plus the rapid shot to the tree 2. Thanks to the most recent patch that fixed the crossbow weapon tree bug, you can now lock both trees onto a single weapon by checking the box at the top of your crossbow interface. This allows you to seamlessly swap between the grenade skills and the projectile skills without having two weapons. So then, our main path revolves around going and investing into the spray and pray, freedom of the movement and unhindered. These are the most important nodes that transform your build into explosive monster. They remove movement penalties while shooting and stack enormous amount of movement speed. With them, you're able to fire off grenades and bolts while sprinting at a breakneck pace without ever losing movement. This is the foundation of why the build feels so fluid. The main concept of this build is very simple. The faster you move, the more ground you can cover, and the more enemies explode in your wake. These nodes also will get boosted by our helmet, which is called the Constricting Command, which I will explain a bit later in the gear section. Those nodes will give you bonus damage, attack speed and movement speed when surrounded, and with the right setup you can keep those bonuses active almost 24/7. Now let's talk about gear. Your main weapon is the siege crossbow. You wanna start with a magic base that already has a high increased physical damage, which ideally could be a crucial tier or better. The greater exalts will fill your suffixes, and you can finish it by applying the perfect essence of the haste or the onslaught mod, and the perfect essence of the battle for a +6 roll. Then the helmet is built around constricting command. When we get it with a surrounded value of 5, it unlocks all surrounded nodes on the passive tree, which gives us this massive boost to the damage, attack speed and the movement speed. It essentially turns every pack encounter into a personalized buff zone. Currently, the Defi 2 on this helmet is bugged and will not work with the mana mod, but once that gets fixed, it will completely eliminate any mana issues. Then the body armor should be the new Corsair base. It comes with a 20% reduction to the penalties for attacking while moving. Then for rings, we should focus on stacking as much life as possible, since that's our primary defensive pull alongside evasion, rarity, and added flat elemental damage. Then for amulets, we should prioritize rarity and plus the projectile skills. I personally recommend to use the devastation anointment, but this is up to you. Then for boots, we need 35% movement speed. Rich players can chase Essence of Heroes on the boots with corruption for the traditional sockets, which will allow you to slot the Feral's gems for massive speed bonuses. And now finally, let's see how to actually play this build. The core rotation is simple but incredibly satisfying. So you enter a map and from the very first pack, you're firing your explosive shot into a wide circle. Entire screens will vanish in a single cast, and Herald of Thunder arcs will proc across anything left behind. Also, you don't need to stop to aim or even slow down. You just sprint forward and everything around you detonates. And then, when you encounter tanky rares, you just drop the explosive grenade, then follow that up immediately with explosive shot, and then watch the enemy disappear in a chain reaction of fire and lightning. And then finally, against bosses, you shift into a more deliberate rotation. So you start with a rapid shot to build the heat and secure that massive 50% fire as the extra damage. Then you throw a flash grenade to stun and lock the boss in a place, and when the window is open you just unload the explosive grenade, followed by the single target explosive shots from the Nova projectile setup. The result is a devastating burst that can delete bosses in seconds, before they have even time to circle through their mechanics.